A group of 20 U.S. senators, 10 Democrats, and 10 Republicans have announced their deal on gun reform. So, in this video, I will go over what is in it, I will show you what is not in it, and I will also show you some reactions from gun reform advocacy groups as well as my thoughts on this. So, first up, what is not in the deal? So, this from Sahil Kapoor saying, what's not in this Senate gun deal? No ban on semi automatic weapons, no ban on high capacity magazines, no 21 minimum age to buy AR 15 style rifles, and no universal background checks. So, some very basic reforms here, not making it into the deal. But here is what is in the deal. So, a centerpiece of the Senate deal is to provide substantial resources for states to implement red flag laws, which allow individuals like police or family members to petition courts to keep firearms away from people deemed a risk to themselves or others. Currently, 19 states and the District of Columbia have red flag laws on the books. The new provisions are aimed at increasing that number and improving their implementation. The agreement also establishes a more rigorous process for background checks on people between the ages of 18 and 21 years old, with an enhanced review that includes contacting state and local law enforcement for criminal records that could be disqualifying, and to appropriate state organizations for mental health information that could affect the decision. The proposal also seeks to clarify ambiguities over who must register as a federally licensed firearm dealer for the purposes of conducting background checks. It slaps new penalties on straw purchasing of firearms to improve prosecution of traffickers, and it authorizes new money for mental health services and school safety provisions. The agreement would also include a provision to address the so-called boyfriend loophole on domestic violence, sources familiar with the negotiations said. All right, so before I get to some reactions online to this, quick summary: resources for red flag laws, enhanced background checks for 18 to 21-year-olds only, which is still weird to me. The fact that you can acknowledge that there may be an issue with, younger purchases, but not people that are older buying these guns as well, is just bizarre. Clarity on who must register as a firearms dealer, penalties on straw purchases, which is basically buying a gun for somebody else, so that helps to cut down on potential trafficking, and making it so anyone convicted of domestic abuse can buy a gun. That's a fantastic provision if it is indeed going to be implemented and implemented properly, but also it shouldn't just be convicted. This should also speak to the red flag laws, though. So if somebody is potentially at risk and they haven't been convicted of anything, they should still, hopefully, with those red flag laws, be stopped. Again, if they are implemented properly in the states where they're not yet implemented. So, in the case of the red flag laws, it's saying resources for states that don't have it. That doesn't mean that they're actually going to implement it, just that resources are there if they choose to implement it. So again, largely, objectively, this is a weak bill, but it's more than even I expected to see. And, they also have money for mental health services and school safety provisions, whatever that means. I guess we'll have to, wait and see. But in terms of what actually matters here, in terms of the gun reforms, this stuff is nowhere near where it should be, but still, based on the history on this issue, the almost past 30 years of nothing getting done on gun reform, largely due to the power of the gun lobby, to actually see something here is surprising. But I'll get to reactions online. So first from Chris Murphy, who helped to lead this group of senators, says, will this bill do everything we need to end our nation's violence epidemic? No, but it's real, meaningful progress, and it breaks a 30-year-long jam, demonstrating that Democrats and Republicans can work together in a way that truly saves lives. Also, reaction here from Everytown for gun safety, an advocacy group, saying, breaking, the Senate just released a bipartisan framework for life-saving gun safety legislation. We've waited 26 years for major federal action on gun safety. We urge senators to support this framework, turn it into a bill, and vote on it now. So a variety of groups have come out in support of this bill, groups that are for gun reform in support of it. I do encourage these groups, though, don't be too positive on something so weak. Like, understand that your messaging here matters, because what you say will also help to dictate how Congress reacts in the future. So if this is passed, sure, it's passed. It may help, around the edges, but ultimately a lot more needs to be done. So it's fine to support this and understand, this is small incremental progress, while also ensuring that your message is that a lot more needs to get done. And March for Our Lives here with exactly what I'm saying. So they write, this package is not perfect, but it's a major step forward and the first gun reform package likely to pass both chambers of Congress in 30 years. This will not put an end to gun violence, but this is a first step and will continue to push for more aggressive policies. In my opinion, this is a great statement. Like, this is laying out exactly what needs to be laid out, that this is nowhere near enough, but it's something, and it should be supported as at this point, realistically, nothing else is going to get done. That's just, unfortunately, the situation. Now, a lot more should be able to get done. And the issue here is the filibuster, right? So you need 60 votes to pass anything. That's why you need these 10 Republicans on board with anything that gets passed. But the only reason you need that 60 votes is because Congress, senators are unwilling to have a carve out for gun reform, yet they've had carve outs for other issues. So when it came to, in fact, there's two examples here. So this is from New Republic. It turns out the Senate can abolish the filibuster whenever it wants. So talking about the filibuster carve out. So one example, Mike Lee, right-winger Mike Lee, asked for an up or down vote on his amendment to prevent the Biden administration from imposing vaccine rules on American businesses. Even though his measure lost, he was able to get his up or down vote. So he got a carve out for his thing. There was a carve out, of course, as well to raise the debt ceiling. So this imaginary barrier of the filibuster is exactly that. It's imaginary. They can decide to have these carve outs when they want, but they're not going to have the carve out unless they have the support needed for the carve out. So you then run up again against the filibuster issue. All these rules are so absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the fact is, Democratic senators represent millions more people than Republican senators do, despite the 50-50 split, because you have, red states like Idaho, Wyoming, with like 3 people in them, and then you have California, New York, with millions upon millions, entire countries in those states. Yet all those states represented by just 2 senators each, despite the population. So Congress is dumb. In fact, not Congress, senators. The Senate is stupid. The Senate should be abolished. That is the issue. But anyways, that's a whole different conversation. Let's get to other reactions here. So David Hogg, who of course is part of March for Our Lives, says here, this is a first step and it's actually a lot more than I thought it would be. This is progress, even if small. Even if it stops one Parkland, it's worth it. So let me get the other side of the reaction here from another Parkland survivor, Cameron Kasky, who reacted to this tweet saying, it scares me because when non-drastic measures to reduce the gun problem in this country inevitably don't cause much of a decrease in gun violence, Republicans will be like, see, gun control doesn't work, when they barely put any effort into the gun control in the first place. Cameron Kasky replies here saying, yeah, but if we don't pretend it's going to save tons of lives, we're deep mega. He's saying this sarcastically. So I am fully in support of these measures, and I totally don't think they're a cheap excuse. Thank you, Senator Lindsey Graham. So again, sarcastic. He is not in support of this weak bill, and I totally get that perspective. At the same time, this is the realities of the Senate. And when you have a weak president like Joe Biden, it's either this or nothing, ultimately. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. And there's no way around that. Biden's not going to change overnight. This is just how it's going to be at the moment anyways. So it's unfortunate, but that's how it is right now. And in terms of this argument here, I get what they're saying. Yes, Republicans will definitely, say, hey, look, gun reform doesn't work because another shooting happened. But they're going to say that anyways. They make the dumbest arguments regardless. They call Joe Biden a socialist. Like you can't strategize and pass legislation based on how Republicans may act in the future. You're not going to make any progress ever if that's what you're worried about. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would worry more about how This may ease the pressure on Congress to do anything substantial in the future, because this has been, a weak bill that passed that promises to do something and ultimately is not going to do a whole lot. But I think can potentially stop, some future violence that, again, these things are impossible to measure, because how would you even know what it's going to help? But we have to assume with some of these provisions that it will help in some cases. But that's it on these tabs. So look at this freaking I'll fix this later. This was weak. This is weak. But ultimately, it's what's possible right now, unfortunately. And it would be great if Biden wasn't as weak as he is. It would be great if he was willing to put pressure on Manchin and on the Senate in general, and, have a carve out in the filibuster for actual reform here. But ultimately, it is what it is. So this is what is possible at the moment. But I would like to hear your thoughts. So share those below in the comments.